100 days remain, not as a countdown, as a verdict. What you build in the next 100 days will speak louder than everything you promised in the last 265. This is not a rehearsal for next year's resolutions. This is the closing chapter, and chapters are not won by hoping. Sit with that number before you scroll past it. 100 days. Not enough time to fix everything you broke, just enough time to prove who you actually are when nobody is checking. Because here is the truth you have been avoiding since January. You did not fail this year in one catastrophic moment. Nobody's life collapses in a single afternoon. You failed in 15-minute increment. One snooze, one scroll, one promise made to yourself at midnight and quietly broken by noon. And because each concession felt small, you told yourself it did not matter. That is the lie. That is how a year disappears without a single dramatic event to blame it on. 265 days ago, you had a version of yourself in your head. Leaner, sharper, richer, calmer. Look at your hands right now. Look at your bank account. Look at the body you are sitting in. That is not bad luck. That is not the economy. That is the sum of every vote you cast when nobody was filming. Your habits are not a description of who you are. They are a ballot. And you have been voting for mediocrity in secret for 265 days straight. Comfort told you it was on your side. Comfort is a liar. It promises peace and delivers rot. It let you sleep in and called it rest. It let you scroll for 2 hours and called it relaxing. It let you avoid the hard conversation and called it patience. Comfort has been embezzling your potential in small, forgivable amounts, and you kept signing off on the withdrawal because the number looked too small to fight over. It is not small anymore. You have 100 days left on the clock, and the account is almost empty. Before you keep watching, prove you are actually here and not just letting this play in the background while you scroll something else. Comment the words "no more excuses" right now. Not later, not after the video, right now, while it still costs you something to type it, because a promise made in public is harder to break than a promise made in silence. Good. Now let's talk about the price, because nothing you want this year is free, and pretending otherwise is the reason you are behind. You want discipline, but you refuse the discomfort that builds it. You want a body you're proud of, but you flinch at the first 30 minutes of soreness. You want a business, a degree, a relationship that doesn't collapse, but you want it without the boring, repetitive, unglamorous middle that nobody posts about. Every trait you desire has a price tag hanging off it, and the price is always paid the same way, in seconds, in reps, in the mornings nobody claps for. There are two kinds of suffering in this life, and you do not get to skip either one. There is unchosen suffering, the illness, the aging body, the regret that shows up uninvited at 3 a.m. when you're 50 and realize you spent your one life avoiding discomfort. And there is chosen suffering, the cold mornings, the workout, the hard conversation, the discipline you selected on purpose. Pay the small price now by choice, or pay the enormous price later by force. The math never changes. It only gets more expensive the longer you wait. Everybody wants the 90-second highlight reel. Nobody wants the 5 years of anonymous, unfilmed repetition it actually costs. You are not behind because you lack talent. You are behind because you keep quitting the boring part right before it starts paying interest. Success is not a lightning strike. It is compound interest on habits nobody sees. Boring is what makes you rich. Boring is what makes you strong. Boring is what makes you free. The people you admire simply tolerated the monotony longer than everyone else standing next to them. So here's what you install for the next 100 days. 3 laws, not suggestions, laws. First law, rule your temptations or they will rule your calendar. A weak mind negotiates every single morning. A sovereign mind decided once and closed the debate permanently. Apply this standard starting today. Missing your habit once is a human mistake. Missing it twice is the birth of a new identity, and it is not the one you are trying to build. Never let the slip have a second day to breathe. Cut it off immediately, or it will metastasize into the story you tell yourself about who you really are. Second law, audit the room you stand in. Trees do not linger with the grass, even though they started in the same soil. If the people around you mock the version of you that wakes up early, trains hard, and guards their time, that is not friendship. That is a leash. You do not need to announce your growth or explain yourself to anyone. Let them call it weird. Let them call it obsessive. Silence is the only response a sovereign mind owes to an average opinion. Protect the standard, not the relationship that threatens it. Third law, define one quest, not 5 scattered wishes. Anxiety does not come from having too little time. It comes from having too many undecided options fighting for the same 100 days. Pick the single outcome that would make this entire year worth it and burn your attention down to that one target. 100 days aimed at one thing will outproduce a year aimed at everything. Marcus Aurelius months, wrote to himself in the dark, not for an audience, reminding himself every single morning that the obstacle in front of him was the way through, not the excuse to stop. Napoleon Hill spent a lifetime studying men who turned failure into fuel and found the same pattern every time. None of them waited to feel ready. They moved first and let the courage catch up on the way. Carl Jung warned that whatever you refuse to face consciously will keep running your life from the shadows, and you will call it bad luck instead of what it actually is, an unexamined pattern, repeating on schedule. None of that wisdom means anything if it stays a quote you nodded at. It only becomes power once you install it as a command and act on it before the feeling of readiness ever arrives. If this is landing, if some part of you just felt the floor shift under 265 days of excuses, subscribe before you go any further. Not for me, for the version of you these next 100 days are supposed to build. The algorithm does not owe you a reminder to keep this promise, but this channel will show up in your feed on the mornings you want to quit, and that single notification might be the difference between day 11 and day 100. Hit subscribe now while the resolve is still hot, because motivation fades in hours, and a system has to catch you when it does. Here is how you carry this for the next 100 days. Starting tomorrow, act as though a camera crew is quietly documenting your comeback, whether anyone ever sees the footage or not. What would the version of you in that footage actually do? Would he hit snooze? Would he scroll for another 20 minutes telling himself he'd start Monday? Or would he sit up, plant his feet on the floor, and simply begin? Because the story only gets written by people who move before they feel like it. Picture the footage nobody claps for, the alarm going off at an hour that still feels like the middle of the night, the plate of food you didn't want to make but made anyway, the message you didn't want to send but sent anyway, the workout that started with zero motivation and ended with the only kind of pride that actually holds up under pressure, the kind you built with your own hands, in private, with no one there to witness it but you. That is the footage that matters, not the highlight reel, not the after photo, the unglamorous middle that nobody would ever choose to watch, and yet it is the only part that actually writes the ending. Stop announcing your goal for applause you don't need. Stop posting the plan instead of executing. Stop turning your comeback into content before you've earned the right to call it one. The world does not reward your intentions. It only measures what you actually finished. Every hour you spend explaining your comeback to an audience is an hour you didn't spend building it. Every caption you write about the person you're becoming is a sentence you could have spent becoming him instead. Shut your mouth. Stay uncommon. Let your results do the talking your ego keeps trying to do for you. Let the silence around your effort be so complete that the only proof anyone ever gets is the version of you that shows up different in 100 days. Not louder, not more visible, just undeniable. You cannot serve two identities for the next 100 days. The one who negotiates with the alarm clock and the one who is actually going to change this year cannot both survive until December. One of them has to die starting today. Burn the plan B. Delete the backup excuse you've been quietly saving in case this attempt doesn't work either. A person with a safety net negotiates. A person with no way back executes. If you do what is easy for the next 100 days, the rest of your life stays hard. If you do what is hard for the next 100 days, the rest of your life gets easier. That is not motivation. That is arithmetic, and it has never once failed to balance. The pain of discipline for 100 days weighs almost nothing. The pain of standing in this exact spot again next year, having wasted another 100, weighs more than you were prepared to carry. Choose the lighter weight while you still get to choose. 100 days is not a lot of time. It is exactly enough. Enough to prove the last 265 don't get the final word. Enough to become someone your past excuses wouldn't recognize. The version of you that keeps waiting for the right moment does not get to make it to day 100. Leave him here on this exact sentence. Stand up, start the clock, get to work.